If you don't know me, I promise you that's not your fault. I am a high-functioning introvert, so mostly an introvert, but I can turn it on if I need to. So it is not your fault. I tend to just put myself around people that I know very well, and for the rest of you, I'll meet you when we get together for something. So another thing to know about me is I'm not a biblical scholar by any means. Most of my knowledge of the Bible comes from things I've overheard at Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby. But I grew up in a church not too far from here, a small Presbyterian church. Grew up with hearing the typical stories that you would tell a young person. Went to church camp from 4th grade all the way through high school, and there started to get some more questions about what we were reading, what we were studying. And I got more questions and more questions. And then eventually went to college where I really became a Christian and was in Bible studies and had more questions and felt pretty good about where I stood on certain things. And those were challenged and got into arguments. And there was some points I would have bet money on. But that continued where I was challenged and often wrong about things. And I lived around Indianapolis and went to church around there, and same stuff, went to Bible studies and small groups and was challenged on more things. And even when I moved back home and Megan and I started going here, got into small groups and got challenged on more and more things, especially when our men's group went through Romans 9. That threw me for a loop. But most of the time, when it comes to my natural feelings about reading Scripture, I'm usually wrong. That is a theme with me. It's almost as if every natural instinct that I have about Scripture is wrong, and I need to have other people kind of guide me through it so I can see what's really going on. So if you're here for some answers today, sorry. There will be no answers. If this goes as well as it can, you'll walk out of here with probably more questions than you will answers. So with that feel-good intro, what in the world are we going to talk about today? We're going to be going through a story that I've heard a lot and I've read through many times, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately, but only lately, because mostly it's just something that I've kind of glossed over, and it's when Jesus is tempted by the devil in the wilderness. Read through it many times, but haven't really cared about it very much. Just kind of read through it and moved on. But for some reason, lately I've started to care about it more. Or maybe I'm tired of not caring about it. But this story is found in 3 of the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, but we're just going to focus on Matthew's text today. So if you want to open your Bibles to Matthew 4, or we will have it on the screen as well, or your favorite Bible app, you can read along. So get this up here. All right. So then Jesus was led up by the Spirit. All right, so this is why I don't enjoy reading the Bible, because I want to learn something and I start right away, and then you come into contact with words like then and you realize I got to go and actually read more. So let's take a step back. Actually, let's go to Matthew 3:16 real quick. This is actually where we need to start. And when Jesus was baptized, immediately he went up from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to him. And he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming to rest on him. And behold, a voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." So Jesus comes to be baptized, and immediately after, a voice from heaven publicly declares Jesus' identity. All right, so this is a public display. There's a voice from heaven. This is my Son. This is Jesus' identity. All right. Then, now we can move on. Now we can go to the story. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you. And on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, you shall not put your Lord your God to the test." The Lord your God to the test. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "All these things I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Be gone, Satan. For it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. You kind of get it, right? Doesn't feel like there's a lot of going on here, a lot of conflict. When I read this, for a long time, I compared this story to this old movie that I like. It's called The Matrix. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. Only the first one, really. I haven't even seen the last one. But the first one, you should check it out. And after you do that, read a book called The Gospel According to the Matrix. It's very interesting when you see the parallels, the different characters, what's going on, the hero, Neo as this Christ figure, Morpheus as John the Baptist. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. So watch it, read it, and let's talk, because I would like to discuss that with somebody. But for today, I have to ruin it for you if you haven't seen it, because you have the good guys, the humans, and they're battling the bad guys, the agents, which are these computer programs, and they're fighting constantly throughout this whole thing. They're in this computer simulation, they're fighting, and these agents are too powerful, they're too strong. Nobody can ever defeat them, except at the end, when Neo starts to discover who he is and realizes that, you know, he is the one and he can see the world for what it is, this simulation. And actually, let's just go ahead and show a clip, because I don't want to explain the whole thing. That's how I've seen this playing out in my head. It is written. It is also written. It's just like this deflection of a combat that really has no drama. There's no pain. He's just deflecting, and it's done, and the devil moves on, and I move on, because I really don't get invested. I really don't care. So what's the point? Jesus is the Messiah. He has been baptized. There's this voice from heaven. There's an announcement about him. He's about to start his ministry, but first he goes and fights the bad guy, which is just bad storytelling, by the way. You should you fight the bad guy at the end. You don't start it at the beginning. That's not the three-act structure that we know and love. That's why I agree that the Bible is really true, because it's really a bad storytelling. That's why it has to be factual. But he has this showdown, and he just breezes through it. He just breezes through it. It is written. It's also written. Not really a big deal. But what if I'm wrong? What if, again, in my initial understanding of what's going on here, I'm off? So that's the journey we're going to go on today, is trying to understand the different ways that I've been wrong about this passage. I want to flip it upside down. I want to focus on the opposite of the ideas I've had about this story for the past 25 years. After all, if every natural instinct I have about the Bible is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right. So I believe there are three main reasons why I have been wrong and haven't really cared about this story. So we're going to go through each of them. The first one is that I understand what it means to be tempted, and so there's really nothing for me to learn here. All right, I understand temptation. I'm very familiar with being tempted, tempted to do things that I shouldn't. I have a long, extended history of that. We're not going to go through all of those. But to mention one, I have not smoked a cigarette in 12 years. It's been a long time. I quit around the time that Juliana was born, and she's 12 years old, so that's how I know. My brain is still like, come on. It's pretty good, right? You remember what it was like. The brain still wants to. Especially like this time of year, like cold nights, just like outside, no clouds, the stars are out, the moon is out, just you and your little ciggy friend, and you're just out there just thinking, just your own thoughts, and temptation to light up is always there, always there. But the body would kill me. There's no way I could do it. It's like I've never done it. It's been so long. There's just cannot happen. Also, Juliana would kill me as well. She's very strong. She's very strong. So I understand temptations. That's one. I understand temptations. So what is there for me to actually get out of this? There's really nothing to learn here. But why would God's Son be led into the wilderness by the Spirit to be tempted to do something that's wrong or evil? Because he was led there by the Father, right? It's not a trap by the devil. Jesus is led there intentionally. And we're never really tempted to do good things, are we? Have you ever felt tempted to do something good? No, we're usually tempted to do what's wrong, or we're tempted to do something that's evil. And imagine all of us in our Bibles or in our apps, we have that word in there, tempt or temptation in our Bibles. And the Greek word used here is peirazo. Tad, I look forward to your emails. So, and this is rendered in most of our translations as tempt. But again, why would Jesus be tempted to do what's wrong or evil? Especially when this word comes up again later, when the Pharisees are going to come to him and they're going to ask him questions about the Torah, about the interpretation of the Torah. But are they trying to get Jesus to do evil in those questions? No, what they're actually doing is better captured in the word test, which gets to the heart of really what this experience is about. Test to reveal the truth of who we are. You know, have you been doing the work? Have you been paying attention? Are you absorbing the material? As of this past week, my sister is now a realtor in the great state of Tennessee. If But to do that, she had to pass a series of tests, and she failed a couple times, but now she's passed them, and now she has proven that she is a realtor in the state of Tennessee. She can do the work. She has studied. She has put the time in. She understands the material. She is a realtor. So to replace tempt with test changes this story a bit for me. So let's go through the test. The first one, then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted or tested by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. Side note, I'm not going to try to define the devil. I'm not going to try to define Satan. I'm not going to try to talk about the origins of evil or anything like that. I am not qualified to do those things. But what we need to know is that evil is present here. Okay? So if you are the Son of God, the devil, the tester, opens immediately with something that was just publicly declared, right before this. The voice from heaven said, this is my son, with whom I am well pleased, and the tester goes right for it. Really? You? Are you really the Son of God? Is this where the Son of God would find himself? In the wilderness, hungry, thirsty, alone. Are you sure? Are you sure, Jesus? And if you are the Son of God, surely you can do something about it. Just solve the problem. You've been fasting for a long time and you're suffering. Just fix it. The tester is undermining Jesus' trust in the Father. His loyalty to the Father. He's undermining Jesus' trust in the Father to lead him. This is a test of, does Jesus trust the Father with his life? And he replies, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. So Jesus replies with Scripture, but not just anything that kind of sounds cool. I mean, that does sound cool, but there's a lot more to that. He doesn't respond with something concerning his humanness, the hunger portion, thirst, but something even more revealing about who he is. Can you think of another time or a group of people who came out of Egypt, came through the waters, and were led into the wilderness for 40 years? So we think about Israel in its infancy. We get this story out of Deuteronomy. If we go to Deuteronomy 8, 2 through 3, we see that Moses is talking to Israel. And he says, you shall remember the whole way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, that he might humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. And he humbled you and let you hunger and fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. Moses recounts the Lord leading his people into an experience that will reveal the truth about who they are. And how did the people of Israel do? Did they pass or fail? You can answer. They failed. Israel was called to be the family of Abraham, who God would bring his blessing to the nations, who would become a kingdom of priests, who would represent their Creator and Redeemer God to all the nations. And they failed. They experienced God's generosity, his grace, redeeming them from slavery. They get out into the wilderness and they say, we want to go back. We hate it here. Give us something to eat. Give us something to drink. We're done. So through this story, in Matthew and the other Gospels, we see that Jesus is restarting the story of Israel. Jesus has come to be where Israel failed to be. And he does so as their king, and he does so as their Messiah. He is going to succeed where they failed. But not just for Israel, but for all of humanity. Because do we need bread to live? Absolutely. But we're beings that need more to survive. We need purpose. We need to know that our lives have meaning, that we fit into a story, and we have relationships. Because without them, we wither when these things are absent from our lives. During the life in COVID, we were basically put into two camps. I'm not talking sick or unsick. I'm talking about whether we were essential or non-essential. There were jobs that were considered essential, and those people got to keep working. And there were people that were considered non-essential. You stay home. You don't need to go in. You don't have a purpose right now. You're not needed. And I think that has continued to hurt us ever since. Because we need to have purpose to survive. We need to have an understanding that we're part of something. To survive is more than just bread. Jesus is saying that his life is more than his circumstances. All right? The hell of hunger does not define the meaning of his life. The trust of the Father is more real than his circumstances. All right. Second test. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." And I'm not going to go into really if he was really taken. Was this a vision? Again, I'm not qualified to do that. But the tester takes another shot. If you are the Son of God. If you really are beloved by the Father. He uses the same technique as before, but then he adds to it. He's actually going to quote Scripture himself, Psalm 91, in fact. I see you know the Scriptures, Jesus. I know them well myself. And Psalm 91, it's a beautiful poem of trust and faith. We even sing the same words here some Sundays. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day. That one, if you remember. And in it says, "For the one that makes the Lord his refuge, he'll protect him. His presence will be with him. For the one that looks to Yahweh and cries to him, he will deliver him." And it's a beautiful poem that's meant to bring us to a place of prayer and trust and dependence when we are in difficult circumstances. If you are the Son of God, Jesus, let's go to the hot spot of the Father's presence. Let's go to the temple. Let's prove the Father's love for you. Let's make it clear to you, because look at your circumstances. Let's make it clear to you. Let's make it clear to me. I mean, your own scriptures say he'll protect you. He's going to protect you. Of course he's going to protect you. And we can prove the Father's love for you. That he's committed to you. You appear to be committed to him. Let's just make sure. So you can know, so I can know, and it can be done. What's the tester doing here? He's twisting the Father's words, which is a new tactic here, but an old tactic when you think about what happened in the garden back in Genesis. He twists the Father's words. These words are about confidence and trust. They're meant to bring us to a place of prayer, and he turns them into some sort of formulaic prediction of health and wealth and promises. If you make God your refuge, he'll always rescue you. He'll always make your life turn out great. He's like a genie you get to pull out to solve your problems. And Jesus answered him. Again, it is written, you shall not put your Lord God to the test. So Jesus is taking us back into Deuteronomy. This time Deuteronomy 6, back to Israel in the wilderness. Yahweh already delivered them. They're not satisfied. They're angry. They're demanding that he deliver them on their terms, and they're putting him to the test. Prove to us that you're committed to us as your people. I guess being delivered from slavery, the 10 plagues, walking on dry land through the Red Sea, that wasn't enough. Prove to us that you're committed to us as your people. And Jesus says to do that, that is to put God in my service. To test God like that is to put God in my service. And that is not how this relationship works. The Son trusts the Father. And if the Father asks for anything, even to lay his life down, he's going to do it. And the third test. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, be gone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. Again, I don't know if they really went to a mountain or if this is a vision, but either way, have we seen something change? Have we seen the tactics change in the test? Or what is he not open with this time? If you are the Son of God. That's changed. Instead of if, we see this bold offer of power and authority. And he's trying to get Jesus to wrestle with his destiny. Is Jesus destined to bring God's kingdom over all creation? Absolutely. But the question is no longer, who are you? But how is he going to do this? And who is this tester to begin with? This devil, evil being, to even claim that he could offer such a trade. So later in the New Testament, we see at an individual level, we see Jesus encountering driving out evil, but even more so, we see it at a structural level. There's these governing structures of human society that we have. We have the powers of the world. And so the tester is claiming that he has major influence over how this world runs. If you don't agree with that, just look at the news. Watch a documentary about anything that's major that's happened over the past 100 years. All right? Jesus is here to deal with the reality of evil. Not just on a personal level, but at the root of the structures and the powers of the world. Does Jesus take the bait? Nope. But his response is also a little bit different. Before he gets into the it is written, what does he say? Get out of here. That's enough. You're done. Now go. Kind of strikes a chord with Jesus, a little emotional. This is evil striking at the heart of who Jesus is and what he has come to do. He says, be gone. For it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. And then he goes. The devil left him. And behold, angels came and were ministering to him. Jesus passes the test that with loyalty and obedience to the Father, he passes the test that humans have been failing ever since Adam in the garden. This is his victory. This is victory over evil. Came across a quote that said, every time spiritual evil appears again, these forces of evil wear the faces of defeat. I thought there was nothing here for me to learn, so I moved on to other stories. Other places that I could learn the truth about who Jesus was, who Jesus is. But the truth is all right here. He is loyal to the Father, no matter the circumstances. He trusts the Father completely. He has power over evil, the evil that attempting to stop him from his destiny, even when it appears in people closest to him. Where else have we heard Jesus say, "Be gone, Satan"? I don't think I have a slide for this, but remember your stories. Matthew 16, 12 through 23, we see, from the time Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "Far be it from you, Lord. This shall never happen to you." But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me." He says the same thing to the devil and to Peter. Why does he do this? Because nothing is going to stop Jesus from being who he is. He's faithful, he's loyal, and trusting of the Father's will. So to see this in a different light, changes the story a little bit. It's no longer the Matrix in a fight. It's the truth of Jesus. All right, the second reason why I haven't cared much about this encounter is that it doesn't seem very difficult for Jesus. It's very easy, kind of like Neo at the end. Neo knows who he is. He's the one. He fights the agents. He's barely even trying. There's some cool movie magic to make that look really neat. But what if I'm wrong about this too? Because tests are meant to be hard, right? Just ask Grayson. He hates tests. Hates them. He said that he would really like school wasn't for all the tests. But why would this be hard for Jesus? So the first one, a little easier to understand. So he's fasting for 40 days. It's a long time. I don't know about you. What's the longest you guys ever fasted? Let's ask that. Has anyone gone 24 hours fasting? Raise your hand. You've gone 24 hours for that. Okay. 48 hours. 72 hours. Anybody gone more than 72 hours? All right. About 35 or 36 hours, some strange things start to happen. Okay? We'd do these 72-hour fasts in college. It's a time of prayer and fasting. And it was very interesting, especially around that 35, 36-hour mark, because you're like, what if this table became a pizza? Wouldn't that be great? You start to see things and hear things. It's very, very interesting. And I'm talking about like middle class hunger too. I'm not talking about like real like hunger, you know. But the desire to turn anything into bread, what if that was really strong? What if that highlights his humanness? Or if the second test, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. He will command his angels concerning you, lest you strike your foot against a stone. What would make that difficult? What if Jesus saw some sort of shortcut to the devil's test? With that, I want you to play along with me. If you would close your eyes. Nothing weird is going to happen. Just close your eyes. And imagine you're walking next to a very large building, and someone starts shouting and pointing, and they say, "Someone's up there." And you look up and you see someone standing on the very top edge. They're stepping closer. More people around you start to notice. They're pointing, they're gasping, they're whispering. The crowd starts to get bigger and bigger. full of different people. People like you, religious leaders, military, soldiers. Everyone within earshot is stopping and watching and waiting. And then he jumps. The crowd just disperses, runs from where he's going to almost immediately land. But before he impacts, angels appear out of nowhere and deliver him safely to the ground without even a scratch. What an experience that would be. What a show that would be. All right, you can open your eyes. What if, with this act, if it happened, what could Jesus avoid? Maybe you could avoid comments like, "Tell us by what authority you are doing these things." Who then is this that he commands even the winds and water, and they obey him? Are you the one to come, or shall we look for another? That one came from John the Baptist. Are you the King of the Jews? With all those witnesses and talk and gossip, could Jesus have bypassed ever have to consistently prove who he really was to people? With that spectacle? Maybe. And in the third test, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all these kingdoms of the world and their glory, and said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." And for this, we need to go back to the book of Genesis. Generations and generations came through the sons of Noah after the flood. And if we look at Genesis 11, look at that. We read that now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth." And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do now will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel. You probably know this story. Because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. And through the generations after Abraham was chosen, and God said, "I will make you a great nation. I will be your God, and you will be my people." There was separation in humanity. But Jesus did not come just for the Jewish nation, but for all the nations. He came for all of humanity. And he could have us back, which was the goal. He could have us back and possibly not have to suffer. Not be betrayed, not be whipped, not be spat on, not be stripped, abandoned, pierced with nails, not eventually suffocate while suspended in the air. What if he could avoid all that and still get us back? I don't know if Jesus really felt those things. Again, it's my instinct. I'm probably wrong. But we do know that afterwards, angels had to come and tend to him. So it was definitely anything but easy. The last reason why I haven't really cared about this story very much, this doesn't really apply to me, which is probably the dumbest of the three. For one, how do we even know about this story to begin with? The Bible is about witness accounts. There's only two people or two beings that were there, which means Jesus had to tell the disciples about it. If he had to tell the disciples about it, it's probably important. It's probably important for them. Jesus told them because just as he faced those tests, he knew his disciples would also face these tests. The same voice, the same evil that attacked him will attack his disciples. They're going to attack us as well. So this story absolutely applies to me. It applies to you. Following Jesus does not keep us from evil. Evil still has influence in this world, but we're being asked to consider that Jesus has power over the evil one. Power over that voice, and you know the voice, right? The same voice that Jesus encountered. Are you really God's adopted son or daughter? Really? Look at you. Look at the circumstance that you're in. If you are truly his, then demand he rescue you. Tell him to grant you a miracle. He's done them before. I mean, how can that be a bad thing? Have him prove to you that you are his. Listen, don't put your trust in the Father who lets you go through this. I can make this easier on you. Just do what I want. Be who I want you to be. I have the influence. I can make your life easier. What do we say when we hear that voice? Go. Get out of here. Get the hell out of here. Sorry, Juliana. There's a time and a place. You have no power here. You've been defeated by Jesus' perfect obedience and loyalty to the Father, who then took our place so that the nations would be restored. These voices do not find who you are as a human being. Your circumstances do not define you. Who you are is defined by Jesus. Do not doubt it, even if you fail. Checking my time. All right, so imagine, hypothetically, it's November 2021, and your grandmother, your last living grandparent, passes away, and you're grieving for her. You miss her. And 2 months later, your mom has a stroke, and she's alive for the next 10 days. 4 of those days, your wife is also sick and in the hospital, and the doctors aren't sure what's going on. So for 4 of those days, your wife is on the 5th floor of the hospital, and your mom is dying on the 6th floor. And you're going up and down stairwells, trying to be there for both of them. Your mom passes away. 4 months later, your dad doesn't show up to a movie. So you go to the house and find him on the floor, and he's been dead for probably 2 days. And you're the oldest, so you have to deal with all the estate stuff and paperwork stuff. And as you deal with that, you try to have a fun time with your family. Take them swimming at Burdette, which is lovely. And you get some water in your ear, and after the swimming day is over, you can no longer hear out of your right ear. All you hear is white noise. And then things fall apart at the house. Dishwasher overflows, floods the kitchen, destroys the laundry room in the basement. Try to get it fixed for a year. Messing with insurance. The contractor you hired and paid money to is no longer accepting your calls because the person who's the main person is in jail and the company is no longer in business and will not return your calls because they don't exist. And then you figure out that you need to go see the doctor because your shoulder hurts and you have to have surgery, which is going to be 3 months of recovery time and all the stuff that comes from that. Do you listen to the voice and seriously question whether or not you're the adopted son of God? Yeah, you do. Do you pray every day for a miracle, sometimes demanding it, and you promise to share it with the world? Just heal me, and I will share it with everyone. Absolutely you do. Do you give in and give up? Give yourself over to negativeness, negative thoughts and depression and feelings that are not who you really are, not what God has designed you to be? Unfortunately, you do. Unfortunately, I failed the tests. But there's good news. There's someone who went through the test that did not fail, who restarted the garden, who restarted Israel in the wilderness. Because of his obedience, he became the only possible sacrifice that would bring the nations back, to bring us back to the Father. Because of his obedience, his body, the bread could be the only sacrifice and the only blood and the only cup that restores the kingdom. And I love that God loved us so much and knew us so much that he's like, I want you to remember this. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to remember it through communion, which we do every Sunday. So we bring up the call to communion. We'll read through that. Here's our invitation. The table of bread is now to be made ready. It is a table of company with Jesus and all who love him. It is a table of sharing with the poor of the world, with whom Jesus identified himself. It is a table of communion with the earth, in which Christ became incarnate. So come to this table, you who have much faith and you who would like to have more. You have been here often, and you have not been for a long time. You have tried to follow Jesus. You have failed. Come. It is Christ who invites us to meet him here. So if you would, come up down the aisles, back around the sides, sit for a moment and reflect on who Jesus is, the truth of who Jesus is, and how we're not that. Come and take